Well, hello, I'm Renee Williams,
And I'm Billy Thomas.
and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. We have back to back to back stuff going on today, Billy.
I know we've got one of our good friends from Raven Run's going to be here today, Anna Wicker. She's going to be talking about owls, which is really cool. We've also got Anna is who's going to be talking about owls. And Anna's been on the show before, but she is such a great host, very knowledgeable naturalist. So I'm glad to have her with us today. We also have our very own Dr. Matt Springer going to be talking about snake ID. We got Dr. Ellen Crocker talking about those pesky plants. And then we have a good friend as well, Dr. Amanda Gumber is going to be talking about forestry buffers and water week stuff coming up. So I'm glad to have you all with us. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the chat function to interact with us. And if you're on Facebook Live, please use the comment section and we'll respond accordingly. But glad you all decided to be with us today.
We have another edition too. Lori Thomas is going to be mentioning Tri-State.
So that's right, coming up. Yes. Yeah, so that's coming up on March 26th, next Saturday. So
yes, we've got a lot going on. So let's get started.
All righty. Hello, Anna.
Hi.
Well, thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you again.
Being here. So what are you going to be talking about today besides owls, of course?
Well, today I figured I would kind of focus on the owls that are a possibility for us to encounter in the Bluegrass region. So we're staying, pretty, not just the Bluegrass region, but, Kentucky in general. We're keeping it pretty regional today since there's so many directions we could go in with owls. So we'll just talk about a few different species we have around here. And then we'll, go into some identification and how folks might actually be able to see these guys out in the wild.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
So yeah, we're going to talk about owls of the Bluegrass region and Kentucky in general today. And of course, this is a subject that I could go on for 1,000 years about because I think they're one of the coolest creatures on planet Earth. But I will definitely try to hit the important points in the course of this presentation. And then if anybody has any questions, things I didn't cover, of course, we can hit on those at the end. So what exactly is an owl? I think most of us have a pretty good idea of what qualifies something to be an owl. Even if you're not, a bird expert, then this is an animal that's sort of familiar to everybody. Technically speaking, you need to be a bird if you're an owl. All owls are, of course, birds. And owls are members of the order Strigiformes. So all of all owls are in the same order, and then they're divided into two separate families. Most owls have what we call binocular vision, which of course is what humans have. It just means that you have those forward-facing eyes, and so most of the world that you see is through two eyes at one time, which kind of gives you better depth perception and that kind of thing. Most owls have sharp talons, and they are equipped to be predators. They are carnivorous. They're hunting things, so they need the sharp beak and talons. Generally, they have feathers adapted to silent flight, so they are sneak attack versus, sort of running things down. Usually, when they're hunting their prey, they're, kind of coming up on it very suddenly and surprising it. And most owls are nocturnal. Generally, certainly we associate owls with the nighttime. There are some owls that come out during the day. There are some owls that break the rules. There's lots of variation, certainly in behavior and appearance and size and everything else with owls. But generally speaking, we associate them kind of with being these solitary, nocturnal, mysterious critters for sure. And they're fascinating. I mean, like I said earlier, I think everybody knows about owls. You know something about them, you recognize them. They're just something that really has captured human imagination from the very beginning. And you see owl-related folklore across all time periods, all different cultures. Like if there are owls in an area where humans live, humans come up with some interesting owl-related beliefs. So there's tons of them. But, I just kind of put one that I felt like really captured sort of the whole span of how we view owls in our folklore and our folk beliefs. But there's an Appalachian folk legend that states that if an owl is out during the daytime, and or is looking in your window, it will predict an early death, which is, you know, a lot of the times we think of owls as, you know, they come out at night and they're kind of strange looking. And so they're associated, you know, with sort of the creepier aspects of life, I guess. I just think it's very funny that like an owl is going to look in your window. I don't know. I mean, I certainly feel like that would be unnerving, but I've never had that happen. I've never had an owl look in my window before, but I would for sure be unnerved if I did see that. And I think there's quite a few reasons that we sort of come up with all these associations with owls as, you know, as humans, why us humans come up with all these owl beliefs. They're nocturnal. Again, humans are not really nocturnal. So anything that's more active at night, I feel like we have these, you know, so all these interesting associations with them, just because it's something we're not as familiar with. They have a lot of weird abilities, like turning their head almost all the way around and flying silently, and, you know, just a bunch of different sort of strange adaptations that they have that are far outside the realm of, you know, what we can do. And of course, owls make lots of weird sounds, which we will get into in a minute. And they also have, and I think this is a big one, especially with owls being associated with wisdom and predictive abilities, their face, rather than being set up like a normal bird where the eyes are on the side of their head, they have this forward facing, like human-like face where the eyes are like where a human's eyes would be, and then their beak is kind of in the middle. So they look very human-like compared to many other birds. So they're definitely a weird one. There's, you know, 20-ish species that you could kind of expect to find in the United States. And then within that, I've kind of narrowed it down to 6 species that you could regularly expect to find in Kentucky. And we'll narrow it down even further because some of these are species that, you know, for the most part, you're not really going to encounter unless you go out of your way for. But there are, for, you know, sort of all intents and purposes, about 6 species that you could expect to find in the state of Kentucky. Those last 2 species on there, the northern saw-whet owl and the short-eared owl, and those are the ones that are on the right-hand side of that owl line up there at the bottom. Those guys will show up during the winter time, so probably we wouldn't expect to see them too much this time of year since we're going into spring. Where are all these owls? If there are owls everywhere and all kinds of owls, and we have six different species in Kentucky, where are all these owls? Well, they could very well be in your backyard. I think we associate owls a lot of the times with like the wilderness and going out into the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, but really owls are pretty adaptable. There are several species that are quite comfortable living alongside people. And that could be anywhere from your local park, your neighborhood, cemeteries, or even in your own backyard. And you can see this picture of the little baby owls coming out of the nest box. If you provide a nest box for owls, then, you know, there's certainly a possibility that they could show up and, you know, decide to be your neighbor right in your own backyard. So we'll go kind of into the sort of the greatest hits of Kentucky's owls. These are the ones that you're most likely to encounter in anywhere in Kentucky, and the ones that you might be the most familiar with. So first up, I have to start with sort of what I consider the star of the show, I guess, in terms of Kentucky owls. It is the eastern screech owl. They are little. They are like the size of your hand, but they are like a big owl in a tiny body. They have a big personality. They have a really loud voice. So if they are in the area, you are going to know about it. They have 2 different color phases. You can see here, there's a red color phase, or like a rufous color phase, and a gray color phase. And they kind of occur mixed across really across their entire range. In the eastern United States, you can find both of those color variations. I believe that there's maybe like a few more, the further east you get, there's like a few more red ones than there might be further west, but generally you can kind of find them mixed up together. They have those big yellow eyes and the ear tufts, like the feathery little ear ear feathers sticking up from their head that we kind of associate with like the typical owl. And then they have a tree trunk camouflage pattern. So these guys can be hard to spot in daylight because they'll hunker down, they'll be right next to the bark, and they will be, you know, pretty much camouflaged really well. This is one that will definitely move into your backyard. They're not too picky about habitat. You know, they're just looking for mice and grasshoppers and shrews and little things to eat. So these are ones that you can put a nest box out for and maybe even have, you know, move in right next door to you. They are starting to nest this time of year. So it might be a little bit late to put a nest box out for this year, but definitely something to keep in mind for the future, because having one of these guys in your yard is just adorable. Oh, I probably should have said with the screech owl, there's one way that I always remember what a screech owl sounds like, and it is not the name. They do not screech or scream or anything else. So they have kind of an incorrect name. What they do is they have this like little whinny call that sounds like a tiny horse. So if you hear a tiny horse up in a tree somewhere, the odds are it's an eastern screech owl. The odds are not in your favor that it's actually a tiny horse in the tree. Next up, and kind of mid-range in size in our owl lineup, is the barred owl. These guys are kind of medium sized and they have a very different look than that typical owl look. They have a rounded head with no ear tufts, so they don't have those little tufty feathers sticking up. And they have these great big dark eyes. There's a bird field guide, like an online field guide called All About Birds, that I will drop the link for in the chat here when I'm done with this presentation, because it's a great resource. But I believe that they describe the barred owl's eyes as soulful, which I think is a great description, because they just have these, like, you know, they sort of have this big, you know, these big dark eyes and this sort of magnetic gaze, I guess, in so far as a bird can have. And then on their body, they have like a barring and streaking pattern kind of down the front that helps them blend in to their surroundings as well. So they're kind of tree camouflage, similarly to an eastern screech owl. Barred owls are maybe a little bit pickier when it comes to habitat. I should probably say before I start this video that this is a live stream from All About Birds, the website that I referenced that I will put in the chat. And it is a barred owl nest. And barred owls eat critters. So there may be critters that are dinner in this barred owl nest. So, you know, if that's not really your jam, then for sure, maybe don't, you know, watch live streams of bird nests. But if it's something that doesn't bother you, then it's really cool to have the opportunity to check out some live, like, streaming bird nests where you can see the nesting behavior and the young growing up and all that kind of thing. So this is a barred owl. They prefer a little bit more remote of an area, a little bit more wooded. They love like an old forest and a wooded swamp type of situation. And they also nest in tree cavities or nest boxes, similar to the eastern screech owl. You can see this one is in a nest box. And this is just, they have a little like live stream camera up at the top of the nest box, so you can observe their behavior and, you know, watch it from the comfort of your home. No tree climbing required. And they are really versatile as far as their dietary requirements. You can sort of get an idea of their diet if you watch these live cams of owl nests. But barred owls sort of take it above and beyond, like they'll eat anything that's the right size for them to get a hold of. But they will also go ahead and if they think that, you know, water is shallow enough for them to sort of wade into, they'll go on ahead in and start fishing and looking for crawdads and frogs and that kind of thing. And that's what that little guy on the bottom of the slide there, he went fishing in that cold water and got a frog. And that's kind of unusual for owls. They're not usually much for wading. So our barred owl, to me, the thing that really makes it stand out, besides, of course, the soulful gaze, is They have the weirdest sets of vocalizations probably of any of the owls in Kentucky, and in my opinion, you know, maybe every single owl in the world. They have a song that is a series of hoots that usually the sentence pattern that it's like written out as is who cooks for you all. And that actually is, to me, what it sounds like. And that's like a territorial and a mate attracting type of vocalization. So I'll go. So you can kind of hear that sentence pattern in there. And that makes it really easy to learn and pick up on. And then it has just an unlimited supply of weird sounds that it uses to communicate with other barred owls. So a really quick little example, we'll just scoot it forward so you can. They just, you know, any sound that comes to them, it feels like they'll just sort of use that to communicate with, and I'm sure it means something to the other barred owls. I will say that having a couple barred owls above your tent overnight can make for a less than peaceful experience if you're going camping. They're very loud if anyone's ever had that happen to them. Very cool, but after a couple hours, it gets a little much, you know. So next up, we have our, I don't really know what you would call it. I guess our great owl, our big owl, our bad owl, are sort of the owl that people think of when they talk about owls in the United States. And this is the great horned owl. This is a big owl, many times the size of an eastern screech owl. They are really, like, if you think of an owl, like this is the owl that you probably think of. They have those ear tufts, the big yellow eyes. They're very large and powerful. They are able to hunt pretty much anything, you know, in terms of if they can get a hold of it, they can carry it off, then they're going to hunt it. And that includes anything from skunks to groundhogs to smaller prey like mice, shrews, that kind of thing. They do not nest in a tree cavity. They are going to try to, you know, get a more open situation. A lot of the times they'll steal an old hawk nest. They might nest sort of in a cavity if it's like a little bit more open and big enough for them, because they are a bigger bird. So they need like an open area, maybe even on the ground or on a building ledge. So they're not super picky, but you're not going to like get a great horned owl in a nest box in the way that you are with a screech owl or even a barred owl. These guys start the nesting season really early, so they are already well underway. There's already probably baby great horned owls in the nests. And this is another live streaming nest cam from All About Birds. This one is a great horned owl nest in Savannah, Georgia, I believe. And you can see little fuzzies of the baby owls in there, and then it looks like mom is getting rained on there. So these are a great way to see the behavior of, you know, these birds that are something that most of us would not encounter sort of on our daily lives. Their vocalizations are what I always think of as the movie soundtrack. This is like if a character is walking out in the woods at night and things are scary and mysterious, then they'll dub like a great horned owl vocalization in there, because it's just like the default kind of owl sound. And you can kind of hear in the background, there's another owl responding to that one. With owls, a lot of the times, both the male and the female will vocalize. With a lot of other birds, usually only the male sings. And that sounds like a pair that's kind of calling back and forth to each other. Last up, I did want to mention one owl, not because you're super likely to see it, but just because if you do see it, folks want to know about it. It's very cool. So this is the barn owl, not to be confused with the barred owl. This is a medium-sized, light-colored owl, usually kind of tawny, cream-colored. And this is an owl that, while many people are familiar with from pictures, is actually really pretty uncommon and even rare in the state of Kentucky and across its range. So the state of Kentucky considers this a species of greatest concern. This is one that folks from Fish and Wildlife are very interested in hearing about if you've spotted it. They seem to be limited by not having food and nest sites close enough to each other. So these guys, as you might imagine from their name, they are nesting in barns. They'll also use like abandoned buildings, silos, like anything that sort of provides like a little safe place for them to lay their eggs. They don't build a nest, they just lay their eggs on the ground, but they really like old buildings. And they also need like a great big open area to hunt adjacent to that because they are open area hunters. They're not really a woodland owl so much like some of our other owls that we talked about. And that can be kind of hard to come by. A lot of the time, a barn owl nest is not discovered until someone goes in to knock down an old building or, knock down an old barn, something like that. And at that point, it's kind of too late. So habitat is a really big one for these guys. If you have barn owls on your property, and that could be nesting or roosting, then that's awesome for science to know. Like let's definitely make sure that those birds are protected. I'll put a link in the chat here when I'm finished with the presentation with the information on barn owls from the state of Kentucky, where that you can report if you've spotted one, if you have one roosting or nesting on your property, and let those folks know that you have a nest. I think as of 2019, there are about 77 active nests in the state of Kentucky, which, considering that's the whole state, that's really not a huge number. These owls are, beautiful like all owls, but, maybe a little extra beautiful, fascinating. I always think that they're probably the origin story of like more than one ghost encounter because they make this horrifying screeching sound as their vocalization. So that's pretty creepy. And then, they're light colored, so you see them swooping towards you at night. And then just imagine that you're like up in your attic trying to fix the insulation and you come across a barn owl nest. Not to say these babies aren't cute. I'm sure their mom thinks that they're adorable, but just imagine, crawling along through your attic with a flashlight and you come up on those guys. So they're probably, I would guess, the origin of many a ghost story. But again, I'll drop the information in the chat if anybody is interested in learning more about barn owls or reporting barn owls that you've seen in your area. Spotting owls. So of course, we went over the fact that owls are cool and awesome and amazing and worth going out to spot, but how do you actually do that? Well, they're pretty sneaky. They come out at night. They're camouflaged. The easiest way to know if an owl is in your area is by hearing it vocalize. But every single time I have seen an owl, with the exception of maybe one or two, it was because I was doing something completely not owl related. And then all of a sudden there was an owl. So every little while they will come out in daylight. You'll see them swooping over the road. You'll see them sitting on a telephone pole. You just never know when a random owl will occur in your life. But if you want to sort of up the odds, guided hikes are a great way to see or hear an owl, your first owl or your second or your 54th owl. There are guided hikes in many areas of the state, at nature preserves, parks, that kind of thing. I work out of Raven Run Nature Sanctuary in Southern Fayette County, and we do several owl prowls every winter and go out and look for and listen for owls. So in addition to actually going out on, a guided hike and having someone else help you find the owls, you can certainly go out on your own if you have access to an area where you can wander around safely at night. And of course, there's always the option if you are, have access to a yard or you own property, you can put out a nest box and see if you don't, have a little neighbor screech owl move in. And then you have one that you can look at all of the time. Resources, again, I will drop these in the chat or get them to you all somehow. But some great resources to learn more and help you identify and help you learn the sounds. There are tons of resources out there, but a couple really good, easy, free ones. The Merlin app, which you can download onto your Android or iPhone. It is free. It is through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and they have an amazing resource for identifying and listening to the sounds of different birds. And then Cornell also created the online resource All About Birds, which has basically like all the information that Merlin has, but on a web page and big and more of it. So those are some awesome resources to learn more. And both of them have sound recordings, which is very helpful. All right, so that was like kind of an owl crash course. Of course, there's a ton more that we could, get into and talk about with owls. We could talk about it all day, but I will go ahead and wrap up and just make sure that nobody has any questions or comments or things to share.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate that. And I want to tell you, some of those owls, it almost looks like a fuzzy fur than feathers. You just kind of want to pet them.
Yeah.
Or at least I did.
And the thing is, like, owls are definitely cantankerous. Like they don't like being pet. As far as I've experienced. Of course, we've got if you're on Zoom, we have Miss Lori Thomas she has an owl in her picture there that is behaving in a very civil way, but generally it's pretty hard to pet an owl, which is just tragic because they're so like petable looking, soft and magical,
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah.
Lori dropped in a lot of the links that you were talking about.
Oh,
so
perfect.
double
Thank you,
check in
Lori.
there. So she might have actually been able to find all that you needed, but
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Lori.
Anna, thank you again. Really love having you on the show. You bring such a great information and a very entertaining way as well. So really appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I loved your presentation. I'm sure we can have you back on for something else.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I will talk about anything nature related all day, every day.
Us too. So we love it. Yeah. Thank you again, Anna.
Thanks you all.
All right. So coming up next, we're going to actually talk about something that the owls might eat.
I was going to say, Dr. Matt Sprinker's with us today. Matt's going to be talking about a snake, right?
Well, we are, and I'm joyous about this because our weather is warming up, right? So I just had dinner outside with my family last night and we were all smiles. But in the same context, other things also like it warming up, and sometimes some folks don't care for them as much as say I do, because I think they're awesome and really just like owls. But it is almost snake season. And with that in mind, I didn't want to spend too much time because I have to follow Anna and how well she did covering wildlife. And I was laughing with her side commentaries and also relating to things like trying to sleep under two owls, which is not something that happens. But I want to give us a quick run through of a wonderful resource that was developed here for the issue of snakes, just to give some context to make sure folks know it's out there, and hopefully if they run into a problem or a question that they can find it and use it, and if all else fails, then reach out to us and we'll try to get you on the right place. So with that in mind, I'm going to quick share my screen here and just at least make folks aware of some of the attributes of the webpage. First and foremost, the easiest place to find it is actually just Google Kentucky snake identification. It pops up really quick and easy. You can try to, you can put in KY snakes at UKY or kysnakes.uky.edu and it pops up as well. But I tend to just Google Kentucky snake identification, which is most likely what people are probably thinking of at the time. But the way this is broken down, this is the landing site here. So this is what you're going to see when you click on the link to get to the page. We have a couple different tabs at the top here that are all, we hope, useful to you. We think they are, but generally it just breaks down some of the information that allows you to use the site a little better. For instance, using like the geographic regions, depending on where you are in the state, if you just want to know what snakes you might run into. So we can click on something like Southeast here, and you will see all the snakes that are found in the Southeast portion of the state of Kentucky, native snakes. We do not deal with those that escape. And every year I get pictures of things like pet ball pythons that are found in the middle of a baseball field in town that have gotten out from someone's house. So these are all the native species. But if you're just curious and want to know what you could find in your backyard, this is a great place to look because it does break it down geographically and by species. Now, if you want to go say and look to see what kind of non-venomous snakes we have that same feature here. Or more importantly, most folks immediately click on the venomous one to see what we've got. And we do have our 4 venomous species in the state of Kentucky that are far outnumbered by the 29S non-venomous species. But if you click on, and this is probably the most used page on the entire site outside of the identify your snake tab, is the copperhead, because most folks, we have a lot of banded species of snake, always want to know if what they saw was a copperhead. But using that as an example, you can see if you click on the individual species, we have its range that can be found within Kentucky. The copperheads are something that you can find statewide. They're a little bit lower densities in the developed portions of the bluegrass, but they can still be found there. We get a little bit of appearance. We usually have multiple pictures to highlight their features. This one is especially important because it's a juvenile and they have a green tail here, which is a definite feature of young copperheads. So for the most part, we try to provide as much information as we can to help you identify what you saw. This tab here, the snake characteristics tab, kind of gives you context for what we can use in the ID your snake function. So it gives examples of questions you will be asked, a slender body, so a body type, slender body, what does that look like compared to a moderate or a stocky, and so on. For the most part, we try to make it as user-friendly as we can. We're gonna hopefully refine this a little bit over the summer. But another feature we do have that a lot of folks like to use is the identify your snake page. So if you kind of got a glimpse of a snake and remember a few features, this hopefully, you don't have to remember them all. You don't have to answer all of these, but you can at least pick one. Say it was a fat snake. You can just click a stocky body type here and hit apply, and it should have all those snakes that would be considered potentially stocky body type pop up. And there's some leeway there because a stocky body type to a herpetologist or a trained wildlife biologist is definitely something we can easily identify. There's some leeway there for species that you may perceive as stocky, but not necessarily what we would call stocky on the professional side. So they're lumped in there to make sure that we're giving the best chance possible for you to see the snake that you think you saw. And then overall, we have basically every native snake has a page just like the one I showed you for copperhead, and the information is all there, multiple pictures, and we're hoping that you're not doing this after you got bit by a snake. That would be probably a bad news. Of course, I think if you did get bit by a snake and it was venomous, you'd know pretty quick. Overall, though, we don't have any information on this page yet that talks about managing to keep snakes away. Or, there are a lot of folks that like snakes. So how do you attract them is the opposite side of that. That's probably something we'll try to add in the future. But we hope that you use this tool. We think it's a pretty good one. At the very least, it will help you maybe get some peace of mind of what you see in your backyard. That more than likely is almost always a non-venomous species rather than a venomous species. So with that, I will happily take any questions that anyone may have. I know we've got a busy show.
I've always wanted to talk to you about is that you said, people have said, well, that is a poisonous snake, or
yes,
and you're like, no.
we don't have poisonous snakes. We have venomous snakes. Remember, poison needs to be ingested. So we have poisonous mushrooms, right, Ellen? And we do not. So the snake actively has to inject you with venom, right? One way or another. We have so the 4 pit vipers that we have fangs that do that. We also have a rear fang species in the hognose where it actually drips down the saliva. The glands aren't attached to a fang that injects, but it actually is a gland that just drips down the teeth in the back of the mouth that allow it to work in that fashion. And the hognose venom is because it's rear fang, it's very different than a pit viper venom, and it's not one that we generally have to worry about for humans. It might cause an irritation more so. As I sit here and I have a hognose snake sitting next to me that I play with on a regular basis, so that gives you perspective.
Yeah. So Anna likes the owls and Matt likes the snakes.
I like the owls too.
Oh.
Yeah,
no, snakes may not be as cute as owls, but they're certainly very important.
Very beneficial.
I think they're adorable at times.
I guess eye of the beholder, right?
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. We appreciate you being on.
Y'all have a wonderful day.
Hey, thank you very much, Matt. Really appreciate you. Oh man.
All right.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Ellen a moment ago, we got
Exactly.
Dr. Ellen Crocker's with us today, our forest health specialist. Hey, Ellen.
Hey, everyone. Great to be on today.
I'm glad to have you as always.
Although, every time I come on for this section, I'm talking about something that no one wants to see, right?
But sometimes we need the medicine, though. We need the medicine.
And maybe a good comparison to what Matt's talking about with snakes, and that nobody wants to see those either. Although I do. I like snakes as well, Matt. So I'm right there with you. But today I'm going to be talking about a new pesky plant to have on your radar, and that is Italian arum. So hopefully you can see my slides okay. Let me know if not. But this is something that's on my watch list. So it's kind of too early to know exactly what this is doing and how bad it's going to be in our area, but it seems to be spreading pretty fast and popping up in places where it never was before, which obviously for me is a red flag. And in some other parts of the country where this has been established longer, it's already recognized as an invasive problem, both invasive in your garden and your yard if you choose to plant it, but more kind of concerningly spreading out from there into the woods. So it kind of looks like somebody plopped a house plant outside and it seems out of place, and so you might be tempted to leave it or to purchase it and plant it because of that. But I'll give you a couple reasons why you don't really want to. So here's another kind of close-up picture of it. And it's a perennial herbaceous plant that's native to Europe. And it leaves out in the late fall, and it's evergreen through the winter. So this is what it looks like right now and over part of the winter, which, that's kind of eye-catching. And we don't have a lot of things that do that. But then it will die back in the summertime after flowering, and it doesn't look good then. So that's one reason why you might not want it. But also another reason is that is toxic. All parts of this plant are toxic. We were talking about poisonous and venomous earlier. This is something that not only would you not want to eat and not have animal eat, but it can cause skin irritation when it's being handled as well. So another potential concern. And here you can kind of see one of the reasons why I am concerned about it. This is a natural area that I work in, and you can see this neighbor's yard where they'd planted it in one spot, but it's just kind of filling in all along this fence and now finding it all over that natural area. So it is spread by seeds and by little tubers, little roots that are moved around by wildlife. I think squirrels really like them, but probably other things too. So just a little bit more on identifying Italian arum. I mean, it really stands out. It looks like a houseplant has been growing outside. It has really attractive triangular leaves that can have really beautiful variegated patterns. So here you can see this venation, kind of white venation on it. Its leaves might be kind of maybe arrowhead shaped, and those will come out, late fall, and right now through the winter it'll be shiny and green and glossy. And then in just a little while, so early summer, late spring, it will flower. And they have this spathe and spadix flower that's kind of like what you'd see in Jack in the Pulpit, right? So you've got this is the flower, and then that develops to these tiny little fruits that start out green, but then over time they'll turn this bright orange, and it can be attractive. But again, animals are going to take those seeds and move them around. And in addition to that, you've got the root system. So this is just a very small Italian arum that I pulled up. And you can see that underground, it's got all these tiny little nodules that are really easy to displace. And some of the research I've been doing shows that even just one of those little tiny nodules can start a whole new plant. So it's something that you definitely want to be on the lookout for. And not spreading that around unintentionally. And so here's just kind of another photo of from one cluster. I got dozens of these tiny little tubers that could all start a new infestation of Italian arum. And another name that people use for Italian arum is lords and ladies. It is something that you can find for sale and find marketed. So I think it's important to be aware of that this plant might not be as innocent as it seems. So if you are seeing this pop up in your land, in your neighborhood, what should you do about it? First, I really recommend preventing its arrival. And that could be preventing its arrival. You don't want to move around these tubers to new area. You want to be careful in moving soil around if it's a problem. But also not moving around, don't buy it. You can see it for sale in all sorts of catalogs and online. And, it makes it sound like this really great plant with these beautiful fruits that develop and foliage. But you'll notice that the reviews are kind of low for this one, right? And if we were to dig into that, what we'd find is a whole bunch of people saying this is an attractive plant, but it is extremely invasive and should not be planted. So this one, an interesting plant, and is now popping up everywhere in my garden and yard. And, Roundup doesn't work and I'm having to dig it up. So just pointing to how challenging it is to get rid of it once it's established. So just don't plant it. Stop it from establishing to begin with. I really advise you to have some caution with that one. And then if you do see it and it's just like a tiny little pocket of it, I recommend digging it up. It's got those tiny little tubers and bulbs. So you want to make sure not to pull it up because those will dislodge and stay in the soil. But dig that whole thing up. Don't put it in your compost. Put it in the trash because that'll just spread it further if you're moving it around, digging it up. That way, all parts of it should be sealed in a garbage bag, and make sure to wear gloves and protective clothing while you're doing that, because again, it does irritate your skin if you're touching it. So that's kind of my first recommendation. Now, there are some possibilities for using herbicide with this, but really there's not a lot of information on the best way to control it, because in part, your herbicides might kill that foliage, but they might not kill those tubers, which are so key to its reproduction and spread. So you're much better off preventing its arrival and digging it up if you can, rather than herbicide. If you are using herbicide, it's got a really waxy cuticle, so you want to make sure that you use something that'll penetrate that waxy cuticle and repeat that as necessary to kill that plant, because it'll keep coming back up from that root system. So again, this is a plant to watch for. It's not necessarily one that's well established in our landscape, but it's on my radar, and I want it to be on yours too, because I see it popping up in more and more spots. And if you've got it planted in your yard, now's a great time to dig it up, trash it, and plant something better going forward. So with that, I just want to wrap things up and encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always on the lookout for new invasive plants, although I never like finding them, but as they do come up, or if you're seeing something weird in your woods, reach out and let me know.
We did have a question from Josh Perry. He wants to know, is there a native that looks just like this?
There are, I mean, I think wild ginger kind of looks a little bit like it. It's got those, the leaf shape is totally different. It doesn't have that kind of arrowhead shape, but it kind of forms this mat that's a really beautiful green color in the early spring. The flower looks a lot like Jack in the Pulpit to me, only with Jack in the Pulpit, it's kind of like folded over versus this one, it's standing straight up. Honestly, I find it to be very distinctive. It does look like a plant out of place. It looks
Well,
like
Josh
a
thinks he
house
might have
plant.
it in his woods.
I know
so
you
wanna
might,
stick with
Josh. I'm seeing this spread, more and more, and that's why even though we don't really know what it's doing in the woods, and we don't have evidence in the same way that some other invasives that it just takes over, because I'm seeing it pop up so much more. It's a species of concern for me. So if you're seeing it pop up, I'd recommend taking it out before it becomes a problem. And another thing about it, as I mentioned, it's like a house plant that's been popped in your woods. Just for those inquiring minds who want to know, I did try digging it up and growing it as a house plant, and it doesn't do well in that setting. So save yourself some time, just get rid of it.
Good advice. Listen to the doctor, folks. Yes. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate you keeping things on our radar and keeping us abreast of what's going on out there for sure.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right. So there is an event coming up that we have Dr. Amanda Gumbert here to talk to us about.
I know, we know Dr. Gumbert is a water specialist for sure, but it intersects really nicely with forestry and trees. So Dr. Gumbert, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you all for letting me join you today. I am going to drop in the chat a couple of links for you. And one of which is that we're starting some Water Week celebrations on Saturday, actually, is the kickoff. And a lot of these events, I will kind of caution you, some of them are focused around Lexington and Fayette County, but anyone is welcome to join them. You don't have to live here if you want to come and take advantage of some of those. And also, the one event that I really want to share with you is a virtual event. And so everybody can join a virtual event now. And so I'm working with Dr. Jacob Muller and a landowner in Bullitt County, Kentucky, and we're going to host a virtual forested stream buffers field day next week. So that's next Thursday evening, and that starts at 7:00 Eastern, and it'll run for about an hour and a half. And so we're just excited to see some footage of Dr. Kuntz's place and hear from him about some of the work that he's done to restore forested stream buffers. So they're a really important conservation practice that we can put on the land. It's an important forestry practice. It's an important water quality practice, and can be integrated in a forested landscape as well as a mixed use landscape. So hopefully folks will join us for some of those events.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. I'm looking forward to that event as well. And I know Dr. Kuntz personally, and what an amazing landowner and just a steward of our environment. So, folks, you don't want to miss that. He's one of the founders of the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association. He's affiliated with the Knobs State Forest there. So he's just done so much. So Dr. Gumbert, it's really great you're getting to work with him, and we get to spotlight him and some of the work that he's involved with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a real inspiration. And I will say one other thing is, if you missed our January episode 88 From the Woods Today, you can go back and see that. And if you can't make our virtual field day next week, you can get caught up on stream buffers in your woodlands on that episode.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate having you on.
Yeah, make sure y'all follow that link that she put in the chat pod and register for that. It is free, but it does require registration. So make sure you sign up for it.
All right. So we have another event coming up too, which is Lori Thomas is here to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you all for having me on. I've put the link to the Ohio River Valley Woodland and Wildlife Workshop in the chat, but I'm going to go to the our webpage. Can you all see that?
It's come there.
Yep.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, great. So the Ohio River Valley Woodlands and Wildlife Workshop, we also call it Tri-State, refer to that because it is a joint effort between Ohio State, the University of Kentucky, and Purdue Extension. And so it moves around every year. And this year we get to host it in Kentucky. The date is March 26th, and it's designed to provide woodland and wildlife property owners information about woodlands and wildlife and things that you can do to increase habitat, manage sustainability, take care of invasive plants on your property. So we have experts from Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio that will address questions and concerns about management on your property. So that's again, March 26th. It is located this year at the Boone County Enrichment Center in Burlington, Kentucky, and a big shout out to Boone County Cooperative Extension Service for hosting this year. It's a great facility. Hopefully you all can join us. Real quick, the agenda, you can check out the agenda where the doors open at 8:30. We'll get started with sessions at 9:15, but we have a great Kentucky Proud breakfast of turkey bacon and sweet potato pancakes with local maple syrup. So that ought to be awesome. But you can see some of the different sessions that we have going on: trail planning, monarch habitat, managing your woodland for birds, woodland boundaries, invasive species and forest health, coyotes, timber market fluctuations in maple syrup, pawpaws, all kinds of great stuff going on at the event. If you're interested in registering, you can go to the register tab, and there's 3 ways to register. You can contact Renee Williams via phone. Her phone number's there. You can send in your check with the address there, or you can click the link below and register online. Cost for registration, we are now past the early bird registration, but is $55 per person. So hopefully we will see you all at Tri-State. It ought to be a great event. We've got lots of good sessions going on, a lot of great information. In addition, there'll be numerous organizations tabling with information and resources for participants as well. So
not only though for that 55, you get breakfast, you get lunch, and you get a wealth of information.
Right, right. And I was going to say, and our breakfast is being made by Martha Yount. I'm sure most of you all know Martha, so it's going to be awesome. We're looking forward to it.
Great program, Laurie. I know we've been involved with that program for a long time, and I know it's very popular every year. So I'll encourage folks, you get in there and register while you can. And the ability to have these folks from 3 different states come together, and you just bring so much expertise to the table. So trust me, if you've got questions about your woods or wildlife, this is a great opportunity to learn a lot more about them. And even if one of the topics that you're interested in isn't one of the ones shared, I'm sure there's somebody there that can help you as well. So please
Absolutely.
make sure to take advantage of that and sign up for that event as well.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to meet landowners from Indiana and Ohio as well, who have similar questions and maybe concerns as our Kentucky landowners do. So hopefully we'll see you all there.
Yeah, excellent. Thank
Well,
you.
Billy, I told you it was jam-packed.
I mean, it was loaded, right? Not only did we cover owls and pesky plants and how to identify snakes, but we told you about a couple of really great upcoming workshops that you can participate in, and we encourage you to do so. And as always, if you'd like to see something on a future show from the Woods Today, just let us know. We have on our website a little survey that you can complete and let us know what you'd like to see, and you might see it on a future episode.
Definitely. We've done it before. I'm sure we'll do it again. So you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com and get all that information. And again, any show that you've missed, or, you come up and go, "Ooh, what was the name of that pesky plant Ellen talked about?" It'll be posted on our website probably within a week or so. So you can go back and look at all of our episodes there. But we are done for today. So until then, we will see you next Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Today.